and I have flashes of memories. But what I do know is I was taken from my mother who had me when she was only 16. I was taken from her by
Sure. Welcome, everybody. I want to welcome Dara Koenig to the show today. Welcome, Dara.
Thank you for having me, Marissa.
It is my pleasure. Now, Dara, today you have a special message for us, and I really want to get into your story and to have you share your story. But I want you to go back. I know that by the age of 11, you started having some suicidal thoughts, which is, pretty common with childhood trauma. A lot of us experience those. So, can you take us back and kind of share what led to that point? What transpired in your life that got you to those thoughts?
I'm very grateful in that I don't remember details, thankfully, because everything what had happened to me had started so young. I know bits and pieces, and I have flashes of memories. But what I do know is I was taken from my mother who had me when she was only 16. I was taken from her by her mother and her boyfriend, and they had taken me from her for a few years, and during that time um I was very abused, physically, sexually, mentally. It was a programming, so to speak, of sorts that I've heard stories from some of the other adults in my life, like my grandmother's boyfriend had gone and showed off to another adult how he could make me, just by telling me, go and bang my head against the table until I was bleeding, because he told me to go do this, and I would do
Wow.
it without question. um I know there was extreme sexual abuse, and I can tell by the way I developed sexually and like what I thought was okay. No, not at all. But I would hear stories too of my mother saying when I got back to her that I was very mechanical, I was very emotionless, I had never smiled. There was very little, I wasn't a kid anymore. I was 5, she said, when I got back to her. Um, but I wasn't a child. I didn't know how to be a child anymore. I didn't know how to have joy or feel love or to love somebody. I was very emotionless and cut off. And that would go on for most of my life.
Wow. So, what age did you return back to your mom?
I was about 5 from what I
Um,
hear about that. And my mother, she didn't know how to be a mom at 16. I mean, do you
yeah.
really? I mean, I was a young mom at 16 as well. Thankfully, I was able to break that cycle with my own children. Um, but there was, after I got back with her, there was now physical and mental abuse happening. I felt very much like she blamed me for why she didn't finish high school, why she didn't pursue her dance career that she was going to go after, why there was problems in her now marriage because, well, here was me, another child that didn't belong to the man that she was married with. Um, there was a lot of yelling and hitting and just that tiptoe, like you learn to function in a house with the lights off because you don't want anybody to know that you're walking through the house. Which is really funny because it's one of those patterns that I actually still have it. Like I'll like not bother turning on lights in my own house now, just because that was so ingrained. You be quiet. You don't let
Right.
anybody know that you're moving. You don't let anybody know that you're doing anything, because who knows what's going to set off the adult around you.
Right. So, and then you develop these protective
Mm-hmm.
modalities within you that, okay, in order for me to keep myself safe, I have to follow the rules. I have to be a
Mm-hmm.
good child. I have to obey and be obedient and make sure I don't make mom, dad, or grandma or grandpa upset because there's going to be a consequence, right?
Absolutely. I had what I describe as perfectionist issues. Oh gosh, until my 30s. I thought if I wasn't perfect, it wasn't good enough. Um, but that also comes from things like if I would bring home a report card with anything less than A's, I was called an idiot because I should know better. I should do harder. I'm smarter than that. I didn't do good enough. And so anything less than perfection was me failing. And from just so many external influences throughout my entire childhood.
And, you know, when did you start noticing that it was, okay, there's something wrong here? I'm not good enough. Like, what do you think of what age did you start seeing the effects of it all kind of hitting
I
you?
don't, I can't say what age. I just know that I never felt good enough. I never felt good enough. I never felt like I was loved. I never felt like I was worthy of love. Um, I remember, I also remember because of the sexual abuse when I was young, that if a man was around me and he didn't want to do that to me, then I wasn't good enough again because I had been so programmed that that was what men did. If they wanted you around, if they liked you, that's what they did to you. And so as I got out of that environment and I got into another one where the men in my life weren't abusing me, I felt even more rejected. And this is a young child. I mean, I'm less than 10 at this age. And I'm thinking if the men around me don't want to have sex with me, they're rejecting me. A
They don't
10-year
love
old
me,
should not, yeah, exactly. They don't love me. A 10-year-old should never have such thoughts,
right?
ever. No woman should ever have such thoughts, let alone a child. And so I just remember I was about 11, and I remember hearing on the news a story of someone who had taken a bottle of Tylenol to commit suicide, and it worked. And so I remember thinking, oh, there's Tylenol in the medicine cabinet. I can go take the bottle and everything's done because no one loves me. Why not? No one loves me. No one wants me here. It's not, there's no good in having me. So like, let's just end it. And so I did. I took the entire bottle at 11. Thankfully, I only got really sick because there wasn't much in the bottle. I think there was like maybe 10, 15 pills, not a whole lot. I mean, like it wasn't full. But I remember that was my first time I ever truly tried to take my own life.
Was there anyone there that was able to help you, or how
No,
did
no one
you
knew I did it.
know?
I just got really sick and I stayed in bed the next day and was sick.
And then what were your thoughts after that? Like, did you
Oh,
start
I was
thinking, I'm
mad.
not even good enough to commit
Yeah,
suicide?
I
Like,
was
I'm,
so mad that it failed. And that would start what would be almost a daily occurrence until I was 11, till I was in my 30s of, oh, I could just drive my car off this cliff. Oh, I could just run this red light. Oh, I could take this bottle of pills. I mean, it was a constant thought, constant. Even after getting married, even after having children, that thought was always there.
the pain was so immense that it's
Absolutely. Hmm.
unbearable. And not having support around you.
Hmm.
Did you
Absolutely.
have anybody in your life? Anyone that, was able to guide you or to try to, give you some guidance? You could get help here or there, anything at all.
I would have people come and go that would try, they would just speak encouragement to me. One time, my last like real attempt, um, I was in my early 30s and I spent 3 days in a psych ward, um, to try, and they were trying to help me. But I was at that point in my life, I would just say whatever I needed to go home, committed to the next time I ever did it, I wasn't gonna fail. Um, But then there was a wonderful woman who came into my life after I was going through a divorce, and she made this very, very simple invitation. Now, I want to preface this with I had known of God. Okay. My family was like, oh, Easter is something to do with Jesus's death, and Christmas is something to do with his birth, and there is a God. That was about the extent of my religious knowledge, just that there was something, right? And with some that something comes into these holidays with Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. It's all kind of meshed together. Um, but there was this woman that who she's since passed, and I still love her dearly. She's like, we don't have single men, but we have Jesus. You should come to church with me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What? Fine. I was like, okay, it's an hour away, but because I love her, I will go this one day. And so I go, and I'm just sitting there, and she's just sitting there with me, just smiling, and I go about my day. Well, the very next week, I lose everything. I mean, I'm at Starbucks trying to buy a simple cup of coffee, nothing fancy. Okay, just a $2 cup of coffee, and my card's being declined. I'm like, what happened here? What's going on? I just had gotten paid. I know I had paid some bills, but there's no way they could have cleared. And I should have $2 in my bank account. I should be fine. Well, I look, and I hadn't taken care of some legal responsibilities. And because of that, they took everything out. They seized my bank account. And here I was, a single mom, newly divorced, trying to take care of my girls, and everything was just taken from me. I mean, my rent check was going to bounce. How was I going to pay my electricity bill? How was I going to buy groceries? How was I going to do anything? And so that night comes, and I remember very distinctly, it was a Saturday night. That night comes, and I'm sitting there, and I'm with a glass of wine and a bottle of pills. And I'm like, I have one of two choices. I can return to a lifestyle that I could make quick money, but sacrifice everything that was in my heart and in my soul, and just not it was not a good way of life to go back to. Um, or I could kill myself, and this time just do it, because I clearly couldn't take care of my kids. I clearly couldn't do anything right. I was trying to live on my own. I'm like, okay, so I'm staring at this bottle of pills, I'm staring at this glass of wine. I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this, because I can't go back to that life, because I can't raise my kids in that way either. And then suddenly I just hear, make it to church the next morning. And I'm like, this makes no sense. I've been to church once. What is this going to happen? What are you talking about? Just make it to church the next morning. And I don't know why, but I trusted that. I trusted that little voice that just told me, just make it to church the next morning. And it was the longest night of my life, because I kept wanting to go back to that bottle and to that wine and just end it. But I kept going, and I went to church the next morning, and I can't tell you what the message was about. I just know I sat there and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, because for a moment, I was actually grateful to be alive. I think for the first time in my entire life, I was grateful to be alive. And I remember the offering plate had come around, and I, again, had nothing to my name. And so I wrote on a piece of paper, I give you my life. And my intention was to put that in the offering bucket. Well, it never made it to me. So I carried that note with me for about 3 years. But that day, everything changed. I was able to leave the church. I just wanted to be outside. I just wanted to feel the air. I wanted to see the sunshine. I wanted to sit and watch people. I wanted to hear the birds. I wanted to just soak everything in finally. And it was that moment that just everything changed for me.
Wow. You're making me cry just listening to your story.
Mm,
What do you think changed within you at that moment?
I think I found that there was a God who loved me as imperfect and horrible as I was, because I lied, I manipulated, I used people because I was in I want to justify it by saying I was in survival mode, but it was the only life I knew. Um, but I learned that morning I was loved. I was loved exactly how I was. There was nothing I could do that would make me be loved more. There was nothing I could do that would make me be loved less. I was loved. And if I could be loved, then I can show people this. I can show others love.
That is beautiful. And like, what happened next? What was the next steps that you took from that? Once you realized, okay, I am worthy to be here, right? Despite of everything, all the lies, all the things that has been casted upon me to try to destroy me as a human.
I I wanted to get to know this God that loved me. I wanted to get to know what was this all about. And so I did. I just dove into it. I read my Bible for the first time ever. I had podcasts playing. I know people like to knock him, but Joel Osteen, if you ever want to know that how much God loves you, his messages are nothing but love. His messages are nothing but how much God loves you and how much you're valuable to him. So I soaked up him. People like Joyce Meyer, hearing how she was abused and is now able to love women like she does and love on people like she does. It gave me that message of hope that, okay, I'm not, I'm not all of those things that had been spoken over me. I'm not worthless. I'm not a bad person. I'm not unloved. I'm not useless. I'm not good for only having sex with. Okay, when you're abused, that's some of the things that are just programmed to like your purpose. Guess what, honey? You're only
Yeah,
here so I can have sex with you. You're only here for me to take out my anger on. You're here because you've done something wrong.
you're
I
here to
learned
serve other people's needs, not your own.
exactly. I learned all of those things that were so deeply rooted in me were all lies. I I learned who I was. I learned that I am powerful. I learned that I am unique. I learned that I am made with a purpose. I was not an accident my mother had at 16. I was here. I'm here for a reason. I am capable of loving others. I had two children, excuse me, I had four children at this point. And I can tell you this, I never really knew how to even love my children. I've always heard stories of people when they'll have their moms will have kids and um they're like, "Oh, I'm so overcome with love that I didn't feel that when my kids were born because I never felt loved. I didn't know what it felt like. So how could I give something I've never had?"
Right, you don't know. Or if you did try to feel it, you're going to push it away because it's unfamiliar to you.
Exactly. And so I got to learn all of these things and I finally became the mother that my kids deserved. But more than that, I became the person I was supposed to be this whole time. And I know I am strong and I am worthy of an amazing life, not one that's just filled with, oh, struggle and pain and strife. No, I'm supposed to have an amazing life because I get to show others now what's on the other side. I tell women all the time, any day you don't give into that darkness that is trying to overtake you, that's a really good day.
Mhm. The problem is not knowing as a child,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're
Absolutely.
so dependent on the adults around you for guidance. And
Mm-hmm.
every adult is really just trying to suppress, take it, every essence of your soul and try to diminish it. Um, and it's really hard. It's not until you start, you know, thinking, for yourself when you become an adult and you start realizing all these things and you start seeing the truth, that you can make those changes and that you realize there's really no mistake, right? Everything is
Mm-hmm.
by design. As painful as it is sometimes, everything is by design. And we may not know it at the time, or we may not know it in this lifetime, the reasoning of why it is that we had to experience what we've experienced. But there is an ultimate, purpose, a much higher purpose than that we could will ever understand.
Absolutely. People who have been hurt and broken and now they're whole and healed, they're able to make a greater impact on someone who is going through that pain and through that brokenness than someone who's never experienced any type of trauma.
Absolutely.
And I love, oh God, I love those people who have been following Jesus their whole life. They've never had any real struggles. They've never had trauma. That gives me hope for my daughters and my grandchildren that that type of life is possible. But someone like that would have never reached me in my brokenness because I would like, who are you? You're perfect. You don't know anything about what I've been through because you haven't been through anything.
Right.
So
You
it's
can't
those of us,
really, yeah, you can't
exactly.
really relate. You don't understand the extent of the pain, the suffering, the
Mm-hmm.
struggle. Oftentimes, people who have not experienced, they think it's as simple as, well, you could have done this, you could have done that, you
Mm-hmm.
could have called this person, or I'm like, it's not. You don't understand because you become a prisoner. There's an invisible prison
Mm-hmm.
that you're in, and you cannot escape that. It's
I
this bubble that
remember
you're stuck inside that it's like you can't see it, but you're stuck in that bubble and you just
absolutely,
cannot get out.
absolutely. I remember at some point in time, I had learned that only people who want attention tell somebody else that they're thinking about killing themselves. They just do it for attention. And so I'm like, I don't want attention. I want to die. And so no one knew where I was mentally in that place because why would I want someone to think I was just trying for attention? No, I didn't want your attention.
Wanted to escape. You just wanted to leave this game that's so
Mm-hmm.
painful and so hard and harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know these experiences affect us in all levels and all aspects of our life. One of them being our relationships, not just with our kids, but with our partners. And like you said, when you experience sexual abuse, we tend to, as children, interpret that in different ways. So for some is, all right, sex is love. So as long as I'm giving out my body, then I interpret that as that's how I'm going to receive love, or the only way I can get love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Other individuals are, experience that different where they can block off any type of touching or experience with a partner. Um, so from your perspective, how did you, because, the trauma is not just emotional or, you know, psychological, it's also a physical. So your
Absolutely.
body responds as well. So how did your body respond to like later, relationships?
So I am getting ready to celebrate my fourth year of marriage to the most incredible man I've known. We've been together for almost 7. Um, we were married for over a year before he could touch my face during sex and me not flinch. There was those things where I had to do this really, really deep work to discover what is it I actually enjoy in sex versus what had been programmed into me. How can I be fully intimate with my husband, which, because in the context of marriage, sex is blessed, it's sacred, you're supposed to, it's healing, it brings you together, we have this running joke in our marriage that it fixes everything, right? If you're
Yes.
having a bad day, go have sex. Maybe if I'm not feeling well or I got the flu, maybe then we can lay off for a day. But in general, it's what God designed husband and wife to do, to be intimate together and to really truly just connect with each other. And I couldn't do that. I had learned from a very young age to just disassociate what was happening physically, or to put on a character, put on a persona. And that's one of the things that I did too, is I would become someone else just to guard my own soul, so to speak, from what was happening. Um, so I had to do a lot of prayer. I learned to pray before about my sex life. That's not something you ever actually, I had never heard. I don't hear people talk about it. I learned to pray over my sex life. God, show me what healthy sex looks like. Show me how you designed this relationship to be like. Show me how to really trust my husband and to be vulnerable around him without like feeling like I need to run and hide and cover or protect myself in some way. Um, and like I said, it wasn't until we had been married for a year, which at that point we'd been together for 5. And as much as I'd love to say I waited for marriage, I didn't. Um, but we had been married for a year before he could finally even just touch my face during sex, and I didn't recoil and flinch. And so it was a
It's
lot of
true. Like
programming to undo.
and it's a lot longer, right, to heal the
Mhm,
body itself. So you really have to start with, your soul reprogramming your
mhm,
mind before you could even start healing the body, and the body takes a little bit longer. I know for
absolutely.
me, I have to be ready. So I have to prepare my body and say, this is going to be safe and it's going to be enjoyable to really fully enjoy the experience the way you're supposed to.
Mhm,
So it's like communicating with your body and preparing it. Hey, it's okay. You're going to be safe, right?
absolutely. It's okay to like this. It's okay to enjoy it. It's not wrong. It's not dirty. It's not anything. It's beautiful. It's what is supposed to happen.
And choosing being in
Mm-hmm.
control of your body and choosing something because you desire the experience versus, you know, being pressured to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And having a relationship with your partner where the communication is there, where they understand that, hey, I have to be ready and I have to want this. I have to
Mm-hmm.
want you touching me. I have to want you hugging me. And if I don't feel at that moment that it's not okay, you have to understand that, I'm not prepared for you to hug me at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do you still experience those episodes even today where even if it's a hug or it's like, I have to be ready for that?
Sometimes. Sometimes I do, and I attribute that a lot to just where I am physiologically in my age. I'm starting to get older, and so my drive is down. And so I have to go through that mental preparation, like, hey, I'm supposed to still want this. I'm supposed to be good with this. Um, but it took my husband, his love language is touch. Okay. And yeah, that face. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so he'll be like, just walk up and he'll just touch me. And I'm like, why are you touching me?
Yeah, that's
What are
mostly
you,
men's love
what,
language. They love to
right?
touch, right?
But as someone who touch would make you want to jump out of your skin or run and hide or just freeze, that takes a lot of work. And I, one of the things I started asking in my early in our relationship, when I would get that like that brace, like, okay, what's happening? That fight or flight or freeze
Mhm.
type thing or whatever you want to call it. I started asking God, I was like, hey, is this a me thing or is that a him thing? Is he doing something wrong or am I interpreting something wrong? What's really happening in this moment? And will there's been times where we'll be being intimate and I'm like, hey God, help me enjoy this more. Help me relax a little bit deeper. Help me be a little bit more present. Let me enjoy this moment with my husband like I'm supposed to. And so it's still something that I have to be conscious of. To it's not as bad as it used to. Thank God. I am grateful. It is not like it used to. But there are still times where I have to be like, hey, let me enjoy what's actually happening here. If I shouldn't be, then let me know. But this is my marriage bed. This is my husband. It's supposed to be the great place. Help me appreciate this and this gift.
Yeah. I think, we're always going to have those things, something that we have to work on with our bodies. The
Mm-hmm.
body never forgets, it holds the memory, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for its whole entire existence. So it's just coaching the body when it's okay to relax and using different tools to help us. How about with your children, your relationship with your children and the hugging, the kissing, um, was that something you also had to work on and build on or
It is. It was something I had to learn to be intentional about. Um, my girls think I'm weird. Because my oldest and my youngest live near me. My oldest and her husband live like a half an hour away, and my youngest is almost 16, so she's still in our home. Um, but it's someone of something I have to be intentional about, like, okay, let's give her a hug. Let's just rub her back. Let's just make that physical connection. And so it's helping both of us learn what healthy touching feels like. Because I believe
it's
if you know what it feels like in a healthy context,
yes,
it's easier to recognize in a not so healthy context.
very true. And with that, were you more like cautious to kind of coach them since they were little about, healthy touching, not healthy touching, their private
Honestly,
parts?
no. I was not in a place where I could. Um, in hindsight's 2020, maybe I should have, but thankfully, once they got old enough, we started having those appropriate age talks about, hey, sex is gonna start being something that you're exposed to or you start thinking about. But when they were little, it didn't occur to me. Um, and I'm not 100% sure why. I think I just wanted to try and do my best to let them still just be little as much as possible. Even now, I'm highly protective of my teenager. I'm like, I just want her to still be a kid as much as possible. And so,
Of
childhood for
course,
me is the thing I protect.
that you protect, of course. And I know from my experience, I have two girls, and one's about 15. One of the things that I've noticed, not just, with my experience, but even with clients that I work with, is sometimes our trauma, when it's still not healed, it can travel onto our children, meaning they carry that memory remember they spent 9 months in our belly. They're feeling everything that we're feeling.
Mhm.
So during that time, we're carrying all of this stuff still. It's not healed. They're going to observe that into their own cells, into their own memory bank, even though it's not their experience, but they're going to carry a part of us with them.
Mhm.
Have you noticed um that they may be maybe overprotective over you or overprotect, that, I don't want anybody to harm mom, or I don't want men around mom, or anything that where you can say, oh my God, where is that a response of, of
So
them knowing there was something there?
I see it in my oldest the most, just because she lived through so much of the unhealed me than my youngest did. Um, that she has this immense fight or flight response. Like she will fight you on a moment's notice if anything she feels is wrong. Um, and she's very, I don't know, I don't want to say loyal is not the right word, but she will come to my defense, and I'm grateful for that. But she's learned through the healing process to see my strength in that. And so one of the greatest compliments she ever gave to me was, we had moved out of state for a job for mine, but she wanted to go back to California to finish high school for last year with her friends. And I'm like, how are you going to do this and work and go to school? And because she was going to be 18 in her senior year, so she could have. And she's like, I've had you as my mom. I've seen all of you, these things that you do. I'm capable of it too. And I'm like, okay. So I may not have always been the best mom, because I used to be very angry. I mean, extreme. It's what I knew, right? You blew up when you got angry. And so I
Right.
was a very, very angry person. But then she saw that growth in me, and she's clung to that more than who I used to be. And I'm very grateful for that. Now she's still, like I said, she will fight. If she's like gets in that fight or flight mode, she won't run away. She won't freeze. She is gonna stand up and fight you with everything that she has. Makes her marriage a little interesting at times. But she thankfully doesn't have too much of the old how I used to be. She sees
No,
how I've grown and what I've come
yeah,
through.
I don't think they do, but I think they come with an understanding of your pain. And I think that's why
Mhm.
my oldest is the same way. She will, knock you out, you know. Will be very overprotective, ready to fight. But I think it's a response to what they've experienced
Mhm.
while they were in the womb. And they feel like, I think they come into, hey, I'm going to protect you.
Mhm.
I'm going to be your protector. I'm going to show you how to fight. I'm going to show you
Yeah.
how it's done. You know,
Mhm.
do you feel they've also taught you things? Do you feel like your children came in and kind of opened up um, the pathway for you?
Somewhat, yes. I believe they've taught me how to communicate better. They've taught me how to look at someone and look for the best in them, and to actually have faith that there are good people out there. I've raised a few of them. And so that they're not the only ones. And so they've taught me a lot.
They sure do. And I believe children have a purpose, you know, whether it's to teach us something or to show us the way. There's purpose there where they come into our lives, and especially at certain times in our journey. Now, the other question I had for you is, with all these experiences, besides finding Jesus and God in your heart, like what other tools or modalities or therapies did you use to try to help you heal some of those wounds and overcome some of those, belief systems that were so ingrained in, into our brains, right? These
Mhm.
behaviors, and you have to do this, and you have to be the perfect girl, and overcoming feeling not good enough, overcoming that, I don't have the confidence to be, or I don't have that self love that I need. So, what other tools besides God and Jesus in your life have you used to help you?
Well, I had tried therapy before. Um, it didn't work so well for me. I was at a point where, because of some of the things that had happened, um, and there was a point in my life when I was young, that my mother accused her husband of abusing me, and he didn't. But she swore he was. She thought I was enjoying it and I wanted to take her husband. And so when that got programmed into me, that even in telling the truth, I still wasn't going to be believed. So why bother? And so I became a very good liar. Very good. No one knew if I was lying. Hell, half the time I didn't know if I was lying. I was that word pathological? But yeah, I was very, very good at just telling people whatever they wanted to hear, whether it was the truth or not. And
You're
so I
creating the
used,
version that you
mhm,
needed to get through.
exactly. And so I still did that with therapists who would try to help me. And so it wasn't, despite them trying, they couldn't get through to me just yet. Um, Really what the turning point for me and what my best healing tool ever became was when I learned how to be the help that I needed for other people, how to be that safe space for somebody else going through a difficult season, how to just sit and listen and love on somebody when they were hurting, and just how to be that for somebody else. It's just like it was a very healing part for me. So I started becoming to everybody around me all of the things that I wish I had had, because I saw that they needed it.
Did you feel like you were attracting that naturally, where these individuals would just show up in your life, that were needing the help naturally?
Yeah, I think that God was bringing me people who were hurting so I could not focus on how I was hurting anymore and help them in theirs and show me that healing would come that way.
That's beautiful. How did you handle, your own self-image? How did you
Mm.
handle looking at yourself? I know it's
Uh,
one of the
I
hardest
still
things.
struggle.
Yeah.
I still struggle so much. And it's so funny because now I see who I see is a woman who is just, she's full of love and joy. But that doesn't mean that I still, like, I don't have body issues. Um, I hate the way I look in photos. I just had a conference last week and I am dreading posting any single picture of me at my own conference. Okay. And I don't want to post the pictures of me because I hate the way I look. Um, I struggle with that. I still cringe every time my husband calls me beautiful because I don't want to believe it. There's something still in me that just doesn't want to believe it no matter how many times I hear it. But at the same time, there's that other side where I know I am. I know I am strong and I am capable. and I should be confident in all of these things. And I've done so much and I've helped so many women, and I should feel strong. And I do until the wind blows. And now I don't again for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, I think, I struggle with that for many years, and I still do to a certain point. I've gotten much, much better. But one of the things that has helped me was I had the belief that, okay, this bodysuit is damaged.
Mhm.
Okay, it's been abused, used, ripped apart, and it's a lemon.
Yeah.
Basically. So to me was, okay, I need a new bodysuit. If we could just, hang this up, get inside of a different body that looks like similar to the other one, but this is a cleaner version, one that's perfect. It looks just like the other one, but this one hasn't been damaged. It hasn't
Mhm.
been teared apart. So for me, visualizing that transformation, it's
Mm,
the same body, but I just hang up the other suit.
I like that. Like that a lot.
And I have used that help with, trying to help with other individuals, and it seems to really help. But you have to embody that new
Mm,
suit. You have to really envision how it has to look similar, right? Can't look like somebody else that you're not,
mhm.
but it feels different because it hasn't been through all that stuff. And
Absolutely.
it's like a pure
Yeah.
suit. Um, and you just see yourself just, okay, I'm gonna put this suit. My soul is embodying this new suit now that can go on this journey without, you know, all those scars. Because that's on the
Every,
other suit that I hang up on the wall.
absolutely. Every now and then I just have to stop, and I love my husband is the most amazing man ever. When we got married, we did it during COVID, and the wedding itself, none of that was important. And so we got married with these little silicone rings just because it was time. We were finally getting married because we did long distance for years. Um, and so, but this last couple, I think it was just a couple months ago, he got me a wedding ring. And he got me one it's a white sapphire. And he got me this stone because it says it represents purity. And to him, he's like, to him, I am pure. To him, I am not damaged. To him, I am just the most perfect thing ever made. And so every now and then, I have to just stop and listen to the words of my husband and how he describes me and remember that what he sees is true because he's seeing it with his lens as opposed to how I see myself through through all of my history lens. And I would love to be like, okay, if he only knew, well, then X. Well, the great part is he knows. There's nothing about my past that he doesn't know, but he still sees me as pure. He still sees me as beautiful. And he still sees me as the most amazing woman in the world. And so he's good for my ego. He's good for helping me with that self-image.
Well, it's good to, show you, what you
Mhm.
have to embody, that self-love, the same
Mhm.
way of seeing yourself as this pure light that you are, and, that you're here for a reason, and you're here to help so many people. And I want you to tell me about that. What about your journey that you're on right now, and how are you helping other people?
Oh goodness. So I knew I had a call into ministry a couple years after coming to know God. And there was a night where the Holy Spirit told me, he's like, you want a ministry? I'm like, yes, I want a ministry. Holy Spirit's like, you're like, is responded to me with, "Your life is your ministry." And that changed the way I look at everything. That changed every interaction with people. It changed just the way I live. If my life has the ability to show people that they are loved, that they are valuable, that they are seen, then I'm going to use it in every capacity I have. And so I've done a few different things to do that. And beyond just daily, I reach out to my girlfriends and I encourage them and I pray for people. Um, I'm not one of those people, oh, I'll pray for you. I will stop and I will pray then. You text me, say, hey, can you pray for me? I'm sending you back a prayer right now because there's no need to wait. But I've done a couple of things. I have a nonprofit called Changing Your Conversation that was actually born out of being part of a corporate layoff in 2019. Um, I started helping other women who were laid off with me with their resumes and finding jobs and things like that. And so I started a nonprofit. And that's what we do is we do free career coaching to low income women. Um, I'm switching gears a little bit and working more towards like community partnerships so I can work with, say, the local the teen moms or the pregnancy centers or things like that, so I can work with the women that they help. One of the partnerships I'm working on helps women get out of sex work. They'll help women get out of sex work, but they're not equipped to help them find a job. I'm like, hello,
Right.
I can help there, right? And so I'm working on these partnerships to go and build our influence and help continue to help women. I've written a devotional that I'm now turning into a series. My first one filled Hopeless to Hope Filled in 30 days. Ended up surprisingly being a bestseller, and the sequel, because like I said, I'm turning it into a series, Unloved to Unconditionally Loved, gets released this Sunday for Easter. And on top of everything, my husband and I are planting a church. So,
Wow.
like I said, I took very much to heart when the Holy Spirit told me your life is your ministry. I'm like, okay, so my entire life, everything I do is dedicated to loving people and serving people.
That's amazing. What a beautiful story, Dara. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with all of us. It's very, really touching. You definitely brought tears to my eyes and hearing your story. And I just love how courageous you are and the love that you're carrying on serving your mission and helping as many people, you know, through the pain that you went through. You're going to turn that around into this magnificent love that you now get to share with
You.
so many. So thank you.
One of the things I pray every day is that God's love doesn't just stay and fill me, that it pours out onto everybody around me because it's constantly infilling. And so why would I want to hold it? Let it just freely come out onto everybody around me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Mm,
Thank you,
thank you.
everyone, for tuning in and listening to our podcast. Please remember to subscribe, share, and sign up so you can hear more of these. So until next time.